Hey, this is Spoony. I'm here with Dennis Shirk, producer for Take-Two Interactive, and we're here to talk about Civilization 5, one of the games that was on my short list of games that I absolutely must cover because I am a huge Civilization fan. I've played them all. I've played Colonization. I'm such a guy, like, I've even played most of the mods for it.
Nice.
Like, even the official mods that came with, like, Beyond the Sword and stuff like that. Very excellent stuff. And I gotta tell you, the demo was really exciting because I was one of those guys who was getting really frustrated with the stacks of Doom.
Yes.
And that's probably the biggest change I noticed from Civilization 5. And maybe you can describe in brief how that has changed from the stacks.
Stacks of Doom have been around since the beginning of Civilization. I mean, that's the one part of Civilization that hasn't changed that much is combat throughout all the iterations. John Schaefer, our lead designer, big Panzer General fan growing up, he got that as some inspiration for Civilization. What if you took combat out of the cities? What if you kind of pulled it out into the landscape? You could really do cool stuff with the rivers, with the mountains, mountain passes. You could have smaller civilizations defend against big civilizations by taking advantage of the terrain. So we wanted to do one unit per tile, one military unit. So you have a civilian layer where your civilians run around, you have your military layer, and you actually have an air layer on top of that, so your planes and stuff can occupy in the same airspace as well. So it just really encourages the players to strategically look at the map. Really take in what's around your cities, really watch where you put your city, not just because of resources, but because of the terrain surrounding it to see how well you can fend off an attack.
Yeah, what I was really noticing was the fact that in taking away the stacks, getting it out of the cities, you were actually looking at a map where you had firmly drawn battlefronts. Like you had an array of forces, you had ranks of forces, and you actually could think strategically about flanking. Can you describe if there's any differences in multiplayer? Is there any evolution in multiplayer?
Multiplayer is going to seem very familiar to people who've played in Civilization 4. We've got a lot of the same modes going on. We've got, in fact, a lot of our testers on our Frankenstein test group are all Civ 4 multiplayer fanatics, and they're doing a lot of our testing. Some of the stuff we're still playing around with, how city-states really work really well in, if they're going to work really well in multiplayer, things like that. So, as you know, games usually tend to shake out into a military slugfest at its base. Nobody really tries for diplomatic victory when they're in multiplayer. So,
what about espionage? That's always been something that's really evolved a lot in the sense that first spies were in the game and then they were kind of out of the game, and then you had diplomats and you could bribe units and stuff like that. Is there anything that's different with the espionage aspect of it, or I'm trying to like the notion of trade routes and caravans and things like that? Can you describe the situation with that?
Trade routes are definitely in the game. And we're actually doing a lot of stuff with trade routes, especially with roads and harbors and things, to encourage you to build smart roads versus just spamming them everywhere. Right now, there's no reason to spam a road. Likewise, espionage, that was the other thing. Yeah. We didn't put the espionage system into Civilization 5, only because we've changed a lot of stuff. And it's a matter of how much stuff we want to keep cramming into Civilization 5 before we actually scare people away from moving over to it. Because we still got all the core gameplay that's in every version of Civ, you know, the building of wonders and expansion and science, etc. But John really wanted to put these big changes in place, so espionage is going to have to wait till a later time.
Yeah, that makes sense because you always had to manage so many different things. Like you had to allocate resources to all these various aspects, and so I remember you had to allocate to science, building, espionage, and counter-espionage. It seemed like a lot. So the streamlining seems like a really logical step. Yeah. And I'm actually really impressed with the notion that Civ 5 seems like a whole new game. It seems like a new evolution of the game, and that's what really impressed me was the fact that you've changed fundamental aspects of the gameplay, and yet it seems more faithful and more logical to what Civilization should be. Was that the general kind of mission, or like what was the general goal you wanted to accomplish with Civ 5?
Well, it was, and it's something that I mentioned in the demo. Civ 4, especially after Beyond the Sword, was utterly complete. There wasn't much more you were going to do with it, and that's why John decided to make a departure from that. You keep the core of Civilization that's in all the games, and you put other new things in place, like the social policy system, the combat system, all of those new things. Because you could easily be tempted to go the route of just adding more systems to Civ 4, and then it ended up being Civ 4.5, but he really wanted to just try a new route and see where it went, and I think where it ended up is in just a fabulous place.
All right, my last question for you is when can we see Civilization 5 in stores?
September 21, U.S., 24th internationally, and everybody buy it because it's awesome.
It definitely looks awesome. Let's see some footage from Civilization 5, and then we'll be back with Angry Joe for a few more questions.
A moment comes, which comes but rarely in history. when we step out from the old to the new, when an age ends, and when the soul of a nation, long suppressed, finds utterance.
Build courage when courage seems to fail. Regain faith when there seems to be little cause for faith. Create hope when hope becomes forlorn.
I never learned how to tune a harp or play upon a lute, but I know how to raise a small and obscure city to glory and greatness, whereto all kindred of the earth will pilgrim.
The great questions of the day will not be settled by means of speeches and majority decisions, but by iron and blood.
I have witnessed the tremendous energy of the masses. On this foundation, it is possible to accomplish any task whatsoever.
The future belongs to those who believe in the beauty of their dreams.
All right, Angry Joe here with Dennis, as you know, back after Spoony had some questions with you. I got some questions of my own. Now, they're not going to be as intelligent as Spoony's because, you see, I've never, ever played a single Civ 5 game, or Civ games.
You're missing out.
My friends all want me to play on LAN, they all want me to do it, but I'm telling you, you know what? No. It seems boring. There's not the combat. Like, I'm all about combat. You know, military units firing, just beating the crap out of each other, tanks and stuff. And so now I saw the demo that you just gave, and the combat is much improved. Yes. I'm excited about it because I've always said, friends, look, Civ 4 it's boring and it's just a bunch of stacks moving around each other. But this is completely different. I think, like Spoony said, this is like the biggest change to the Civ series like ever. Yeah. And it's, even though you would, if you're concerned that it would change things about Civ, it seems like this is the way it should have been from my point of view. Now, let me talk about some of the things that I wanted to know more about. The leader screens. I thought those were really great. Can you talk a little bit more about leaders in the game?
Yeah, we wanted them to be actual people that you're talking to. You feel like you're in their presence. Like Napoleon you saw in the demo, he's standing in his battlefield. Yeah, it's not just a little pop-up on the screen. You're actually there. He's talking to you. His horse is doing his thing while he's doing his thing.
Fills the whole screen.
Yeah, when you declare the war on Elizabeth, she's like leaning forward in her throne room and she's glaring at you. Her body language changes. All of these things just really feel like you're in the element. It just pulls the player in. And that was the whole key term that the art lead wanted to do, is believability was the key word of the day. He wanted you to believe like you were in this game, not just watching something happen.
And another thing you were talking about is each of these leaders kind of has their own AI. So Napoleon acts the way Napoleon would act it. And I brought up the point that, well, okay, so Napoleon's just going to attack every single time. I'm kind of concerned that you're going to make these one-dimensional if you're going to base them on their personalities.
If we do our job right, they're going to be utterly unpredictable, even though you know that he favors a certain way. One thing,
favorite.
Yeah, you know that you're playing Napoleon, and eventually he's going to invade somebody. That's a fact of life. It's who Napoleon is. If Napoleon weren't like that, you'd think, this is kind of strange. I'm playing in a game with Napoleon. He's not doing that. But at the same token, they really wanted to make these guys unpredictable. They didn't want there to be a rash of numbers on the screen all the time, so a player would know exactly what was going on with the leader. So he might be doing his invasion thing. He might be pretending to be your friend, and then he'll stab you in the back. You might stifle him on the field, and he'll decide to go a culture route instead. But what they're not going to be is one-dimensional. They are going to be unpredictable, but they are going to have a flavor that they prefer. So if we do our job right, like I said, it's going to be an amazing experience. And whenever you play a new game, depending who's on the map with you, you're going to know that you're dealing with some people in a certain way, almost like you do in the real world. You know, if you're like talking, if you're talking about an international leader, you know how they react to certain things. Like if you're talking about Kim Jong-il over in North Korea, you know he's going to react a certain way when you're, playing in a game with him. Yeah. So we wanted to get that kind of feel going in the game.
Awesome. So each of those leader screens were kind of unique. I saw a Mayan one. Basically, he was about to win the game in the demo. He was driving a space shuttle. I know Mayans with space shuttles. Yes. It was charming a little bit. And you attacked him with military. But how many civilizations are in the game? How many of those kinds of scenes will we get? How many civilizations?
We have 18 different civilizations. We often get asked if there's any 2 leaders for each civilization, that kind of thing. John Schaefer, who's a history major, he wanted to really dig deep and have one civilization, one leader per, only because he wanted the widest expanse of cultures he could bring into the game. And some of them he really dug deep. There's some leaders in it that we've never had in Civs before, like Askia, the Songhai. There's Ron Kanang of Cyan, so you will have some of the ones that you're used to seeing, like, you've seen Elizabeth before, you've seen Bismarck before in Civilization. They're just staple Civilization leaders, but we wanted to bring a lot more variety culturally to the game, too.
What about DLC? New Civilizations via DLC?
My lips are sealed.
Okay, oh, come on, give me something. Don't make me angry now. Okay, well, I'll tell you what. If there was hypothetically DLC, would these new civilizations get new CGI leaders, and would they have their own AIs? Would that seem logical to do?
It would be logical. It would be logical. It'll be amazing to see the kind of things that are announced by 2K in the future, so we'll just have to wait and see what happens.
I was trying to trap you. Too smart. All right, man. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for taking the time to talk about Civ 5. And I tell you what, you got me. I'm gonna play the game. I'm gonna check it out. Finally, Civ 5 has won me over. We'll see if it wins you over. When does the game come out again?
September 21 or 24th internationally.
All right. Thank you for being with us. Have a good one, man.
George Washington commands you to pull his finger.